Playboi Carti made his fans wait over 4 years for a brand new album, and last Friday morning, after being live on Twitch for half of a day, we finally got the Carti album called Music, and I'm gonna go ahead and tier list and review it and break it down for you guys track by track here in a moment, and most importantly figure out if the album was worth the hype and worth the wait. Before we jump into anything, like, comment, subscribe to both of my channels. More conversations going on over on Twitter and Instagram, so make sure to follow me there. Join my Discord and follow me over on Twitch. We have a lot more live streams going on over there as well.
Disrespect the 5, I put your ass in the food chat.
We have 30 tracks on this album, a ton of big name features, a ton of great songs, a ton of stuff to break down. So let's go ahead and open it up with Pop Out being the first track on the album. I'm gonna go ahead and kick off this video with some hot takes because I think this track is in the C tier. It's more of this aggressive mosh pit style, but I'm just not a fan of the way Carti is yelling. And I know he wanted to start this album with a slap in the face, and this is something he previewed a year or two ago, but I've just never really been big on this track. It's just not the sound I'm really going for. It's just, yeah, not really for me. I think maybe Hood by Air would have been a cooler intro to open it up with a bang, or even the next track is Crush. Maybe that would have been a cooler, you know, intro with Travis Scott. And I want to put this one higher. It's gonna have to go at B tier, Crush with Travis Scott, who does more of ad-libs and production on this. And I think it's cool, you know, Shorty Gonna Let Me Crush. That's something that has been stuck in my head since the snippet of the music video, and the choir repeating it is really cool. But half the song is kind of build up, and I think I wanted a more like rewarding Carti verse. There's no Travis verse I had mentioned, and it's just not really like this big replayable track as I kind of wanted it to be. Carti says, yeah, he gets paid 2 M's for a feature, which is crazy, and probably gets a lot for the performances. But yeah, I think I was just slightly underwhelmed with this track right here. And then also in the B tier, I'm gonna throw K-pop, which was formerly Ketamine, which came out as one of the singles last year in 2024 on that single run, you know, we had. This song was fully untouched, and a few of those other singles we heard were changed, but I think this was always like one of my least favorite singles. It was like 6th out of all of those singles he had dropped. I'm more of a fan of Hood by Air, Evil Jordan, also 2024, and also Backrooms, and so on and so forth. Another kind of electric guitar beat, and it's cool, and I really like the trampoline drop for a Kuga. I mean, there's parts of the song I like. It's cool. I'm playing it back, you know, with the album, but I'm not, you know, really ever overhyping it as a Carti song. I don't love it being track 3, and especially Evil Jordan, track 4, which we've also been listening to that track. I was trying to dive into the new tracks and honestly didn't think this album started incredibly great. But I'm going to put Evil Jordan in the A tier because this is one of those singles I am still bumping a lot. It's never been this overcomplicated beat from Cardo, who was all over this album, and Oja Volta as well we had on the credits quite a bit. I think like the biggest new thing about this track is the new intro, which I thought was like some TikTok edit of a gunshot and Popular, that you kind of like wait for the song to start. It's really weird. I think I can work with it, and you know what, I actually don't really hate it that much. This track slaps. I mean, Carti walks it down. Disrespect the 5, put your ass in a food chain. I mean, his flows are great, and I think this song has a good representation of Swamp Izzo on the ad-libs, because there is a few tracks where he doesn't necessarily like sound great, but I like the DJ hosting like the mixtape type of feel that this project did have. Mojo Jojo is another A tier for me. I do like the way Carti raps on this beat, but you really just wouldn't expect the Kendrick Lamar ad-libs. I never knew how like their collabs would sound, but it's honestly kind of funny to hear like Kendrick go, I don't wear a polo, and I feel like he kind of does this like backseat role that he did a lot in the Baby Keem collabs, and he does that a lot on this album for Music. And on this album, Mojo Jojo, he does it a lot, but there's a lot of different vocal inflections or different type of voices Carti likes to use throughout the album. I think that is something that really helped this album continue to stay entertaining, because you didn't really know like how he was gonna rap or how he's gonna like weave his way into flows, or like how he was gonna sound. He wasn't reinventing the wheel on this project. It really came down to like what flows and kind of voices he was gonna use, and then having Kendrick ad-libs was like super different and unique, you know, so cool track there. Then track 6, I'm gonna have to put Philly just in the B tier as much as I want to put it in A. I feel like this track featuring Travis Scott, who's on this album a lot, you really kind of have to like this kind of Texas Cactus Jack type of beat that it's on, because sometimes the features just take over songs on this album. And honestly, to me, a track like this is like cool, but yeah, not really even a beat that I would expect. Like, it's a good, like, playable track, but I also don't really know if the vibes from track to track in the sequencing of this album even fully, like, made sense. To me, this album came off as an album that sounds more fun or is honestly better on shuffle. But then we hit this really good part in the album. We have Radar, which is definitely the first S tier on the project. This, to me, you get that old school hip hop, like Wayne energy on this type of beat. Metro Boomin was on this one. Carti gives a great performance on this track, and then that UFO swirling synth type of thing Metro did was crazy. I kind of wish Metro was on this album like a couple more times, but I'm really glad Carti unlocks sounds like this, and I think this is why music in his catalog is unique, is because you do have songs like Radar where he just absolutely goes off and just has like a new feel once again in his catalog. And then you have Rather Lie, which is S tier, and I'd be lying to say that I'm not gonna put this one in S tier, that I haven't, you know, been bumping the heck out of this track, especially with The Weeknd's new album Hurry Up Tomorrow being so incredible. It just makes sense that he hopped on this project and did a feature for feature, and Mike Dean, you know, maybe touched up this one. And this is the most like pop rap song on the album, and I gotta give it to Carti. His like auto-tune melodic verses actually fit really well on this track. He's exciting on the first verse, but even the second I might like a little more, because the walk like this, the talk like this, like that little like flow he did right there was just so much fun. Like, this track is one of the most replayable with that Weeknd chorus. Of course, he's gonna execute at one of the highest levels you absolutely can. Kind of want to hear more like mainstream Carti songs like this in the future, because he is becoming such a big figure in the culture and in music and everything, and I just am excited to see more collabs from him that sound like this in the future, hopefully. And then after that, track 9 is gonna be like probably the top of the A tier. It's Fine Shit. We are in the middle of the best track run on the album right now. If you heard that Cash Cobain snippet before the album, I'm glad that we got this track. It just had a really nice feel to it. And Carti saying my bitch so bad she can't even go outside was like really catchy. A lot of songs have this type of under 2-minute formula, and I think that's how Carti was able to make an hour and 17-minute long project, 30 tracks. Like, the pacing of this album actually isn't terrible, so I gotta give it to him. And then I gotta go ahead and give Backdoor just up in the S tier. This one again had Kendrick on it. When Carti's voice is really like high pitched, I didn't really know what he said. He just says backdoor, but it sounds like bet though in auto-tune to me. I think Backdoor is the best of the 3 Kendrick collabs on here. I really like the ooh ad-lib. It sounds really just like nostalgic to like the Damn era of Kendrick for me. Jhené Aiko also just kind of had some like background vocals. I really like beats like this, and also it felt like Kendrick saying things like Vamp Life Spooky was just trying to give, you know, Carti a nice collab. He wasn't trying to like out-rap him. This wasn't about the beef. This wasn't Kendrick trying to be like the most lyrical or overdo it. I think he just like stayed his welcome perfectly on a couple of these tracks. Track 11, I'm gonna have to just put in the B tier, and I'm not even gonna lie, Carti's chorus is really not the strongest on this track, and maybe it's just the flow he used with that deep voice. And I gotta say, this track actually has grown on me slightly. I would have put this in C tier a couple days ago. To me, Skepta's verse, and I'm really glad that he was on this album again since the first time since Die Lit, but I think he honestly carried this track slightly, or was the most rewarding part of it. I also think the track run and just like the excitingness and the upbeatness of the last like 4 tracks was cool, but he kind of just kills that run with this track placement of Toxic right here. I'm not saying it should have never released, but maybe somewhere else on the album it would have sounded or fit better. I think Munyon is a great example of an A tier song on this track list. I think that is where I should be putting it. He does repeat that chorus a lot. The double cup love, she gonna show me some more. I mean, that part is really catchy. He also says, you know, came a long way since he made Forbes, which is, you know, a really cool bar in the track. But yeah, I just, again, like beats like this. I really like the pacing. I feel like this track is like slightly more sped up than most of the tracks. And sure, you get a representation of some of the mixing just not being like my favorite. You know, you just get blown out 808s at times, or, you know, even the drums and hi-hats don't sound really the crispiest, but maybe that plays into the mixtape feel, or who knows, they could have rushed this album. I also think Munyon, though, I want to give a shout out to that being like one of the most underrated tracks on this track list. I just see people gassing up a lot of other tracks. I think that one deserves some love. Next up is Crank, another banger on this album. I'm gonna put that right next to Munyon, honestly, at A. Dancing to this one is really fun. I think this is one of those tracks where Swamp Izzo is probably doing too much yelling at you, but it's honestly hilarious. I love the part where he's saying free throw, but in between that you get Swamp Izzo just going swamp. It's just hilarious how he is shouting. This track is literally so hype. This one has connected to me. This track, Crank, is honestly hilarious and just dope. And we're back. I'm gonna do it. I'm putting Charge Them Hoes a Fee at C. This to me was like a throwaway from mixtape Pluto. I think Future is even kind of just dead boring on this this track. There's no reason to slap on another little Travis Scott feature. I don't think Carti is interesting really at all on this track. It is really cool how The Weeknd, Future, Metro, Carti, Travis, on all of their last big albums they've released have all had multiple collabs or have all been on each other's projects. I think it's just been really cool. I love Utopia. I love Heroes vs. Villains. I love The Weeknd's new album. I love Carti's album. I love the Future and Metro album. So it's just really cool to see all this. But Charge 'Em Hoes of Fees is not a great song at all. It is like the most dull, probably my least favorite on here. I'm gonna go ahead and put Good Credit track 15 just in front of Mojo Jojo over at A. But Kendrick is again on this. I mean, who would have thought Kendrick was on this I Am Music Carti album 3 times halfway through by track 15? I don't think anybody would have expected that after the year Kendrick had last year as, like, you know, the hip hop MVP doing the Super Bowl and beating Drake. And he kind of reminds me of like his Mustard shout out, and he's done it with other like collaborators and producers, but he does mention like Cardo's my evil twin, Carti's my evil twin, which is really funny. I mean, he gives an energetic verse that I think is great on this track. I think Kendrick was one of the highlights of this track because I think Carti does get away with, yeah, it not being a terrible song, but he gets away with very simple songwriting or rapping about, you know, moving the molly or just drugs, and he raps about drugs in other ways on the chorus like so many different times. On to the second half of the album. You guys knew this was gonna be a long video. This was My Biggest Grail. I Can See Ya Baby Boy, one of my favorite tracks on this album. Great replay value. I don't even want to say like infinite replay value or something like that. That's got to be, you know, top 3 on the album probably. This is the ultimate See Ya ad-lib track, and I really love how Carti just added new ad-libs, you know, for this album as well. It made it really unique. I think this track just makes me happy, and it makes me feel just great that this album is out and that I'm alive for it. I gotta say, I See Ya Baby Boy is like one of the better performances from Carti, or one of the better verses on this album as well. Because genuinely, I do want to say, like, I have a good rating for this album. I'm playing the heck out of this project. I think the replay value and the highs of this album are like extremely high. I think Wake Up Filthy has Travis on it, and I think it, yeah, just belongs in the B tier next to, you know, Philly or a couple of the other, you know, songs in that category. Again, to me, I would say this is the most like, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but like most like standard or like predictable type of collab. And you know, this one has Filthy on there. He's on a lot of the credits on this project. Benny X was actually on this one too. Pass Her to La Flame, Now She Want the O type of bars. Like, you know what I mean? I feel like after this album, I've satisfied that craving of a Double O Cactus collab tape, or, you know, needing more Travis and Carti collabs right now, because honestly, they would have to like reinvent or do something really creative together for a collab tape. Otherwise, I feel like I got it on this project. And honestly, I don't want to knock the Travis features. They're just not like overly exciting, although I do think he does like a solid, like good job most of the time on this project, because I do think Travis overall has been very overhated for some reason, or at least on Twitter in the last like year or two. People have really switched up on him on that new 4x4 song, or, you know, even people have switched up on Utopia, I've noticed. And I really think Travis is still like one of the creative greats like in hip hop and deserves like all of his success. 18 is Jumpin' with Uzi, and this serves as, I think, their first official collab together. There's been some leaks, but like the first time we've seen, you know, Uzi on a Carti album in like 7 years. And I have to put Jumpin' at B tier, because again, I'm not hating, but guys, I know there's so much hype for this album, but we have to have standards. These are the guys that made Shuda one of the greatest songs of all time, you know what I mean? And I feel like Carti didn't really try on the Uzi collabs on this project. He gave the short little verse that didn't have much character. It was really Uzi that had his little verse save it. This chorus, again, is not great. It's just not really my favorite pocket or flow that they found. I do like this track, like I'll bump it, but like I am slightly disappointed for an Uzi and Carti collab for the first time in so long. Next after that is Trim, and I think that is one of the better like B tier songs. Somewhere around there in B tier I think makes sense. This to me is a Future track. You listen to this because right away I did underestimate the flow he has, and Swamp Izzo was right. He does have, you know, the whole world using Carti lingo with Trim, and like Carti has a lot of like influence in the culture like on this album. Like, you do got to give it to him, but he wasn't great. I just think it's on him for kind of muffling this verse. And at first I thought it was Swamp Izzo being a little annoying with the whole like 5 thing that he was spamming, but it was really Carti's fault for not being exciting. It was Swamp Izzo trying to really save it with those ad-libs, if anything. Cocaine Nose is a B tier. I think that this song grew on me. It has that electric guitar stuff that he's carried over for this new era post Whole Lotta Red, and like, you know, the underground fans probably like this type of stuff. Again, I think this is a better like mosh pity type of song over Pop Out. And Cocaine Nose, when he literally says that lyric and repeats it on the second half of the track, like it sounds exactly exactly like the raspiness of Zelly Ocho's voice to me. I am glad that I like this song now. Like, that devilish electric guitar really did work. If anything, the beat is the most like stuck in my head from that track. But yeah, I think that like it has to be the definition of a B on this. We're now 2/3 of the way in. Track 21 is We Need All the Vibes, and this had Thug and Ty Dolla $ign on it, and I'm not gonna lie, this might be up there for the top of A tier. And this was really just a Young Thug song where he was happy and he was sliding. Let me know if this is like a post-jail verse or not. Someone tried to tell me that this was like an old leak that maybe they cut Gunna off of. I'm not really sure, but to me this was just a Young Thug song. Carti, just with 50 seconds left, decided to half-ass a 20-second verse and slap himself on it and call it his. In my opinion, this was like Thug carrying the track all the way, and this coming after Cocaine Nose is the reason why I said this is a shuffle type of album and type of playlist, because how does that sequencing even make sense? Honestly, it really doesn't. I don't even mind Ty Dolla $ign. Some of the track lists, or this area of the track list going in the second half, honestly gives me like Vultures vibes or compilation album vibes. Next up is Olympian, which I want to say is A, but I think after today has grown into A. I don't think a single track from release has grown on me as much as Olympian. Like the bar just being I got so many chains on like an Olympian for the bridge is really like the highlight of this. But I think I really like the beat and that synth, and I just see the longevity in this track, and I feel like this is something I'm gonna be bumping for a long time. And I think it is that Cliff Shine and also the DJ Moon touch on the beat that makes me really like it. But not featuring any Opium artists on this project for all 30 tracks was crazy, especially on this beat, or even the Opium Baby beat, which is coming up next. How did we not get a Ken Carson feature? That is honestly really crazy, especially because Travis is on here like 4 times. And I gotta say that Opium Baby, I'm sorry, man, this is not for me. Right away, I think I knew this one wasn't for me as much as I try to like it. It's again, one of the worst on the album and a C tier for me. I feel like a lot of like the underground fans will like this, but to me, each verse for Carti is a mess. He just really doesn't make sense like this. You have a whole Wild West shootout going on from Red Dead, and also Swamp Izzo is yelling at you. It is a mess. There's too much bass. I thought maybe he could do something towards the end with the but honestly, it's too hard to even make it there for me. Yeah, it's just not for me. Opium Baby, C tier. On to Twin Trim, which is a very interesting one because this does not have Playboi Carti on it. I wouldn't really call it an interlude either, but I'm not gonna lie, I have to put this like somewhere in A because Uzi low-key goes off. It's a little weird that you have to wait like halfway through the track, but it kind of sounds like something you need to play while you're racing at Yoshi Falls on Mario Kart. And I was a little mad that Uzi just stopped rapping by the end of it, because I think Uzi could have kept on going and it would have made the song a little bit better. I'm not really a fan of tapping out at 2 minutes all the time. It feels like the underground new age way to do things, and I don't really like how short some of the music or some of the verses are getting nowadays. But this album I think can be comparable to Pink Tape, which I think would be slightly better and more polished of an album than Music is. And honestly, this was a good performance from Uzi on Carti's album. Again, like I said earlier, did better than him on Jumpin', and so if anything, I should probably dial back on any of the Uzi hate, as long as he's not doing, you know, the Whip It voice. You know, he sounds good as ever on Twin Trim. Like Wheezy is another S tier, and I gotta be honest, not to spoil the rest of the video, this is gonna be the last S tier, you know, and I gotta put that just somewhere up there, you know, around the top 5. And I was kind of sad we never got a Wayne feature on this album, figuring that he paid homage to him on the title of this track. Hell, even like the branding and logo for I Am Music or whatever came from Wayne a long time ago. This is one of the best choruses or catchiest songs on here, so he's got it in him a couple times. But yeah, that two-tone APs, you feel like Wheezy so fire, you know, he's saying that he's big like Bieber, she didn't believe him. I mean, those bars are really funny, because I did want Bieber on the album, because, you know, he was teased on the Opium account before the album dropped a few hours. People were saying Bieber was gonna be on here. Then next after that, we have track 26, This One Got It. I'm gonna put this in B tier. I think once again he just sounds too much like Future, and I think that this low register, low voice that he used also on All Red should stay exclusive to this album. If he wants to mix his voices in the future, maybe it would work, or on his own type of beats or his own style, that's cool. But I feel like he is purposely dumbing down his style to that Future Atlanta trap wave on this album, and that's kind of, you know, the purpose of it. And I think I was really confused at first, because when he says Molly Perky's I Feel So Invincible, to me it sounds like vegetable, like I'm not even joking. And honestly, I think Walk deserves to be right next next to it. For some reason, Walk, and I do like the beat to it, is no track to me on this album goes by faster. Like, this song is over in the car, in the whip when I'm playing it before it even started, and that's just how short some of these tracks are, and I think that's just how he made a 30 album song work. And because I understand like him trying to stretch this album to 30 tracks, knowing it's going to be your most highest successful, highest stream selling album, you can capitalize on that with big collabs and 30 tracks, because you got to make it up to your fans who you haven't dropped the project in over 4 years. So like, he's dropping a lot of songs. I get it, bro. Like, Carti's finally dropped the hidden vampire, you don't see him, like any of those gimmicks. Like, he's actually like posting and being active and capitalizing on big events and big moments like this. So I'm not mad at him for doing this on the album, and Walk is just a cool album song to me. It's not over the top. I think a lot of tracks like Walk, This One, Cocaine Nose, whatever, like I just don't think a lot of those average album songs compare to Whole Lotta Red if you were to go track for track. It just really doesn't to me. Hood by Air is definitely an interesting one, and is honestly the hardest to rate, because I think as a song and as a concept I have to put it in A, but I'm also really frustrated with them cutting out moments in this track. For instance, towards the end of the song, he kind of just like in a freestyle voice says, hot bitch I'm scorching on the porch New York, and whatever. Like, that part getting cut out honestly made me sad, and the new snare rolls and whatnot honestly kind of hyped me up. I can deal with that. Overall, Hood by Air is like too insane of a song to be at 28 on this album, and that just shows that Carti did not put together this track list in a great order or had a great sequencing, because I think, yeah, he should have probably opened up the album with this. And I really don't want to be that guy that's like supporting like the leaks or streaming a version that isn't like paying the label or Carti, but I'm gonna have to bump the older version, because this part legitimately makes it a little bit worse releasing it on the album right here on this album. I just don't see why I would change up on my own, you know, local files and Apple Music myself. Like, I'm just gonna keep bumping that version because it is a slightly better version of the song, and that version would definitely be an S tier, because I loved some of those singles. As I had mentioned, I think some of the singles that came out before the album would wash a lot of the tracks on the album, if I gotta keep it real. Overly is track 29, and yeah, this song just has to be somewhere in C tier. It's not terrible, it's just like at track 29, Carti runs out of steam. He was too bold for doing this long of an album. He's not giving us that quality, because passing it to the bro, cash, drugs, like what else could he really talk about in other ways on this album by this track? And honestly, I am surprised that this beat is produced by Molly Raw, because I find the piano super annoying. I just really never got into this track, and is one of the more dull tracks on the album to me. South Atlanta Baby, somewhere in, yeah, B tier, sounds good to me. I do like the beat to it. I do think Swamp Izzo, like, you know, Atlanta, the last track, you know, don't lock us in a box, we create genres. Like, maybe it wasn't the album or the moment to say that we're invincible and that, you know, you can't lock us in a box and we create genres, because I feel like Carti did dull down his sound to make it more like mainstream, and like he dulled down his potential for these big collabs, and because he knew this was going to be his big moment. But for the most part, I think like Carti just did like solid. I think it's produced like, you know, solid. I'm not, you know, blown away by this album. I'm gonna be playing like the tracks I like a lot. I'm very happy with my S through D ranking. Don't get too worried about the individual ranking on each tier. I think I did like the best I could do for 30 tracks. I studied this album and listened to it like the best I really could over the last like 3 or 4 days.
Two-tone your APs looking like Weezy.
So let me know in the comments down below what you guys think of the tier list. Of course, comment, you know, your guys' thoughts and what you guys think are the best tracks down below. But to pop up my final rating tier list that I do of where I'm going to rate Playboi Carti's music album, I'm going to go ahead and put the music album up in the amazing category, just barely. I do think that this is probably Carti's like second best album. It's really close to Die Lit in my opinion. I do think it was really hard to live up to that like over 4-year wait. So I think part of me was hoping for Carti's best album, and we got a bloated, a little bit 30 track album, or a couple things weren't like as precise as I was hoping. Thank you guys for watching all the way to the end of the video and to the end of the review. More album reviews and tier lists on the way on this channel. Subscribe to both of my channels, please. I have Twitter, Instagram, more conversations there, Discord, Twitch. You guys know the drill. More videos on the way soon. We're on the grind. Love you guys. Peace.